If anything could go wrong, it went wrong. I know I'm feeling sorry for me, but there's a lot of self-pity going on. Tomorrow I will be okay. The dawn will bring a brand new day. I'm sure by then I'll be fine. Lord, today I really need a friend. I know that you'll understand. Would you hold me while I cry? I'll take a lot of your time. When I should be strong, I should be standing by now. But it's you I'm leaning on. Your voice kept me safe from harm. Like a child in your arms, you cradled me through hardships faced in life. Lord, it's just one of those days I've been falling in every way. Would you hold me while I cry? I try to be strong, but if anyone can fall apart, I'd fall apart. I run back to you again, and you heal my broken heart. You have truly been a friend, reaching out to lend a hand. Lord, you could have passed me by. I'm asking for your strength today. Lift my spirits, Lord, I pray. Would you just hold me while I cry? I'll take a lot of your time. When I should be strong, I should be standing by now. But it's you I'm leaning on. Your voice kept me safe from harm. Like a child in your arms, you cradled me through hardships faced in life. Lord, it's just one of those days I've been falling in every way. Would you hold me while I cry? Your voice kept me safe from harm. Like a child in your arms, you cradled me through hardships faced in life. Lord, it's just one of those days I've been falling in every way. Would you hold me while I cry? Ooh.
Why should the shadows come? Why should my heart be lonely and long for heaven and home? When Jesus is my portion, my constant friend is He. His eye is on the sparrow, and I know He watches me. His eye is on the sparrow, and I know He watches me. So I sing because I'm happy. Oh, I sing because I'm free. troubled. His tender word I hear, and resting on His goodness, I lose my doubts and my fears. Though by the path He leadeth, but one step I may see. Oh, His eye is on the sparrow, and I know He watches me. Yes, I know He watches me. Sing with me, church, I sing because I'm happy. Oh, I sing because I'm free. For His eye is on the sparrow, and I know He watches me.
So I'll try to speak up so you can hear me. But it's good to see you all this morning, and it's a pleasure and it's an honor, and I'm humbled to be here this morning. And I'm not offended in any way that you gave April more applause than I did, but you know that's okay. I understand. You're happy to see her, and I'm happy to see her too. You know, so, but that's okay. You know. But let me start this morning, and I'm just going to start with a question. I'll start with a question this morning. Let me ask you this morning this question. Who is Jesus Christ? Who is Jesus Christ? Now, as you're thinking about that question, I'm wondering what you're thinking. Now, you may be thinking, let me ask you, do you see him as a historical person? Like a guy that lived a couple thousand years ago, kind of like you'd see like Ben Franklin or Abraham Lincoln or somebody like that. No personal connection, just somebody that lived a couple thousand years ago. Or you might be in here and maybe you think of him as like someone special, you know, like a prophet or like a religious leader or somebody like that. Or indeed, you may be sitting here and you may know him as a Savior, and praise God, we can rejoice over that. You see, this question, this is the most important question you will ever answer. This is the most important question you will ever answer. You see, Jesus Christ is the heart and the core of the gospel. You see, Christianity is not a philosophy of life. It centers in a person who is the core of everything Christians believe. Who is Jesus Christ? Well, let me make it a little bit more personal for you. Who is Jesus Christ to you? Who is Jesus Christ to you? You see, if he was just a man, or for that matter, if he was just a prophet, we could forget about him. But if he was God, as he said he was, then you will one day stand before him. And you cannot afford to be wrong. This morning, I would like to challenge you and cause you to think of your answer in light of Scripture. Now, I've said this before here, and I'll probably say it again. Maybe they'll get a banner or something, that way they'll keep me from saying it, but the Bible is a narrative, and I've said that before, and a narrative tells a story, right? A narrative tells a story. And the purpose and the theme of the Bible is Jesus Christ and God's relationship to man. Now, within the Bible, there are sub-themes. Okay, there are sub-themes. Now, there are many books that cover different aspects. You know, you could look at the Old Testament and say, well, the Old Testament consists of like the law, or which is called the Pentateuch, or the Torah, which are the first 5 books of the Bible. Or there's some historical books, and there's the prophets. Or there's the Psalms, which are songs that help us to meditate, or Proverbs that give us some practical wisdom. Or we might even look over in the New Testament and we might think, what about the book of James? Well, the book of James, we could say something like, well, that's about maturity, about sanctification, about growing up. Or we could say, what about the book of Philippians? When we say, well, when the book of Philippians is about unity. And so there are sub-themes within the Bible. And then we turn over to the Gospels. In the Gospel of John, the Gospels, which are Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and the Gospel of John is kind of peculiar. And it's entirely different than most other books, because John actually states his purpose within his writing. He tells you why he's writing the book. So there's no guesswork. Look with me, if you would, in John 20:31. John 20:31. John 20:31 reads, "But these are written that ye might believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that believing ye might have life through his name." So John states his purpose right in the gospel. He tells you why he wrote it. He says Christianity is about Christ. Christianity is about Jesus Christ. Now that may sound rather simple to you. I grew up in a small town in Ohio. It's a very rural area. It's very flat, a lot of cornfields. And one thing we have a lot of in Ohio is deer. And there is a sign, one of them yellow signs. It's got a buck, a silhouette of a buck on there. I think it's a 10-point, something I'll never see in real life. But it's got a picture of a silhouette of a buck and got the yellow sign and everything. And underneath that sign it says deer crossing. And I lived in that little modular home in Ohio on that little block on Wood Street almost my entire childhood. And let me tell you something. I have never seen a deer anywhere near that sign. I've been there early in the morning. I've been there in the afternoon. I've been there late at night. When I was a little kid, I kid you not, I used to get up and I would run and open up the curtain. I'd look over there and see that. I never saw a deer there. Never. I came to the conclusion as a kid that, deer just don't read signs. But, I see signs on churches as well. And I've seen the sign out front. Thank you, by the way. Thank you for the welcoming. But I see the sign out front, and, I see a lot of churches, and they put signs and maybe what they're going to speak about or something important to them. And I remember several times I've seen a sign that would say something like, "Jesus is here. Jesus is here." Now, if you went to a church like I did when I was a young person, and most of you probably went to church when you were young, and my mom kind of made us go as the Sunday morning babysitters, but if you went to church like when I was a person, I wonder, is Jesus there? You see, because a lot of times, and just from my perspective as a child, outside of the intensive care unit or the funeral home or maybe even the dinner hour blessing, it didn't seem like people ever believed a word of it. Who is Jesus to you? You see, behind the "Jesus is here" sign, Jesus was used as a symbol to approve what we already are, to bless what we are already pursuing, and to prefer the people we are most similar to. You see, behind the "Jesus is here" sign, you really didn't know if he was there or not. He kind of seemed like a genie in a bottle. God showed up kind of only when we invoked him. Well, I wanted to believe the sign was true before I was saved and when I was an adult. So sometimes I would show up on Sunday mornings, and I would leave the building an hour later, and I found, after finding a robed choir and a slick speaker at the podium, a plea for money, and some beautiful stained glass. But I wondered, where's Jesus? You see, when I was a kid, me and my 3 brothers played baseball. Now, we had an empty lot in the back of our house. It was an abandoned church. And now, a lot of times we didn't have a ball. A lot of times we didn't have a bat. We never had a glove. But we had an imagination. And I remember one time somebody kicked a soccer ball in our yard, and they never claimed it. And so, well, it was mine. So I grabbed that soccer ball, and I went up to my brothers, and I said, look, now we can really play baseball. And my brother Mike looks at me, and he says, you can't play baseball without a baseball. That's a soccer ball. Well, it's pretty obvious you can't play baseball without a baseball. When I was going to church in the Fairfax area where I met my wife, there was a little lady in there, and her name, everybody called her Grandma. And me and Grandma really developed a very special relationship. She was really good to me, and she helped me out while I was in college, while I was going there. And she let me stay at her house. And she treated me like I was her child, She would make coffee for me when I went to work, and man, it was the most horrible coffee I've ever drank. I'd go out the road and pour it out. She never knew that. Made it for years, but wow. But she had a bad memory. She had a horrible memory. And I remember sometimes she'd turn the stove on, and flames would be shooting up to here, and she'd forget she had the stove on, and she'd pull out the cookie tray with her bare hands, and she was she was not only forgetful, but she was tough. But I remember one time she loved to bake, and she loved to bake pies. And I remember one time I got home, and I was there, and she had this pie, and I remember cutting into that pie, and I remember getting ready to eat it, and I said, Grandma. And she says, yes. And I said, there are no apples in the apple pie. And she had a big old bowl of apples there. She forgot to put the apples in the apple pie. But I'm thinking, you can't have apple pie without apples. You can't play baseball without a baseball. And you can't have a church without Jesus Christ. See? But John says it's all about Christ. John's purpose is evangelical. He writes it in order that you may believe. Now, John's gospel is different from the other gospels. The other gospels are referred to as the synoptic gospels, and that's just a Greek word that means similar, because their content is similar. You see, Matthew looks at Jesus as a king, and it was written to a Jewish audience, and it traces Christ's lineage from Abraham, which would be important to Jewish people. Now, Mark looks at Jesus as a servant, and it was written to Romans, and Romans really understood the servant-master relationship. And Luke looks at Jesus as a man, and it was written to a Greek audience. And Luke was the only Gentile of the disciples, and he was a doctor. And so he really emphasizes Christ's humanity, his humanity. But John looks at Jesus as God and was written to all men. Now, it's noteworthy to point out that Mark and John do not provide a lineage of Christ's birth or his lineage, his generations. And that's interesting because, Mark looks at Jesus as a servant. Well, nobody really cares what the lineage of a servant is. And John looks at Jesus as God. Well, God always existed, so he really didn't have a lineage, And so, oftentimes in seminary, have you ever been in school and you thought to yourself while you're doing this exercise, you're thinking, will I ever actually use this in real life? I remember saying that to my English teacher, and my mother-in-law teaches English, and I rely on her for grammatical things because I'm really terrible at it. I probably didn't even say grammatical correctly. But you think to yourself, am I ever really going to use this in real life? And I remember my English teacher said, this is real life. Okay, well. But oftentimes we're tasked to look at key words. And, Matthew, if we were to say, what's a key word in Matthew? And we would say something like fulfilled. Because Matthew talks about the fulfilling of the Old Testament prophecy regarding Israel's king, which was important to a Jewish audience. The key word in Mark would be immediately. Servants were to obey now. The key word in Luke would be the Son of Man. But the key word in John is believe. John sets out to prove that this king from Matthew, that this servant from Mark, that this human being, this man from Luke, was indeed God. You see, Matthew emphasizes Jesus' works. Well, what most interests you about a king? Well, words. Matthew emphasizes Jesus' words. Well, when the king speaks, people listen. And so Mark records a lot of Jesus' sermons, or Matthew records a lot of Jesus' sermons. Mark emphasizes Jesus' works. Well, what's most important about a servant? Well, his works, not what he says, but what he does. Luke emphasized Jesus' humanity. Luke gives the greatest detail regarding the birth and the crucifixion of Christ. But John emphasizes Jesus' deity. Christ claimed to be God in either his words or his miracles. And John chose those miracles which best proved Christ's deity. You see, it took 4 Gospels to adequately present Christ. And John even says in 20:30 that there were many things that were there that he did that were not even written. Whereas Matthew, Mark, and Luke are primarily historical in nature, John has a spiritual focus. The Synoptic Gospels emphasize historical incidents. But John takes those incidents to prove that this person was indeed God. Now, John only records, there's about 40 miracles within the Gospels, but John only records about 7 of them because he wanted to show the ones that really proved Christ's deity. And out of those 7 miracles, one of them really sticks out to me in particular. And the reason why it does is because it takes place at what's called the Pool of Siloam. And that's what this picture is here. This is actually the Pool of Siloam. The Pool of Siloam is a very interesting place. The Pool of Siloam is actually in what's called the City of David. In the City of David, strangely, it's only 11 acres. It's just an 11-acre area. And that's where David ruled while he was king. And under the City of David is Hezekiah's tunnel. Hezekiah's tunnel. And it's quite an interesting place and I actually walked through the tunnel. It's about 1,700 feet. And Hezekiah had it built. And there's several interesting things about it. One is that each group of men started at either end of the tunnel, and they met exactly in the middle, which is really almost an impossible engineering feat. They have no idea how they did it. And walking through that tunnel, you can actually see places where they stopped, kind of moved over a little bit because they knew they were out of the way and kept going. Now, it's only about as wide as my shoulders, and most of the time I had to hunch down because it's not very high either. But Hezekiah built a tunnel there so that he can get the water that's in the Gihon Springs in the Kidron Valley, and that empties into the Pool of Siloam here. And that miracle actually takes place in John chapter 9, if you want to turn there this morning. John chapter 9. John chapter 9, verse 1. And as Jesus passed by, he saw a man which was blind from his birth. And his disciples asked him, saying, Master, who did sin, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Jesus answered, Neither hath this man sinned nor his parents, but that the works of God should be manifest in him. I must work the works of him that sent me while it is day. The night cometh when no man can work. As long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world. When he had thus spoken, he spat on the ground and made a clay of the spittle. And he anointed the eyes of the blind man with the clay, and said unto him, Go wash in the Pool of Siloam, which is interpretation sent. He went his way therefore, and washed, and came seeing. The neighbors therefore, and they which before had seen him, that he was blind, said, Is not this he that sat and begged? Some said, This is he. Others said, He is like him. But he said, I am he. Therefore said they unto him, how were thine eyes opened? He answered and said, A man that is called Jesus made clay and anointed mine eyes, and said unto me, Go to the pool of Siloam and wash. And I sent and washed, and I received sight. Then they said unto him, Where is he? He said, I know not. They brought to the Pharisees him that aforetime was blind. And it was the Sabbath day when Jesus made the clay and opened his eyes. Then again the Pharisees also asked him how he had received his sight. He said unto them, He put clay upon mine eyes, and I washed, and do see. Therefore said some of the Pharisees, This man is not of God, because he keepeth not the Sabbath day. Others said, How can a man that is a sinner do such miracles? And there was a division among them. They say unto the blind man again, What sayest thou of him that he hath opened thine eyes? He said, He is a prophet. But the Jews did not believe concerning him that he had been blind and received his sight, until they called the parents of him that had received his sight. And they asked them, saying, Is this your son?